like I always do, but I wanted to talk to you about the film, Secrets and Wives movie. The film has nothing to do with my investigation on the Henry Hill case. The Henry Hill case, I'm a private eye, and I own a business called Seattle Detective Bureau. I started my company in 1979, so I've been in business for 41 years. It's been a really good 41 years, but during COVID, it's a little more challenging than normal. Different kinds of cases that I've had in my past. I worked on the Pierce County racketeering case where George Chanovich, who was the sheriff in Pierce County, got indicted and he went to prison. He was selling protection money and he was selling business to people, and if they didn't pay protection money, they would burn them down. And I worked for one of the people that sued the city of Pierce County, and city of Tacoma, and the state of Pierce County. And at the time, it was a case that was the biggest judgment in the state of Washington's history. And I had to go find people as witnesses. I located 7-year-old kids who were on the corporations of different things, and I had to go all over everywhere in that case to investigate. And throughout the business, I've been in business 41 years, and throughout the business, we've had numerous different cases all over everywhere. We sat in on the Noriega trial down in Miami in 91, and it was a fascinating trial. And we were there doing alternative medicine. I had to track down a guy named Evans Rapsamanicus for one of my clients. He was an inventor who was in Vegas at the time. And he was an inventor that was building these machines. And the FDA came in and they raided the company and they broke down and grabbed all the machines. And so Evans Rapsamanicus came to the hotel that I was staying at and he interviewed me for my client. And then my client and him got together. Evans Rapsamanicus ended up going to England, to London, and he continued doing his work in London. He was a scientist and an inventor, and he created all these different things, these paint machines and all these different machines at the time. That was a long time ago. And some of my cases, I had to go to Zurich and Czechoslovakia and Austria and all over everywhere. Craig S. Palmquist put money into a bank, the Bank of Pictain in Zurich. And when I went to Zurich, you go into this clothing store, and the woman there, who is the sales rep, says, can I help you? And I said, I'm looking for the bank. And how you get to the bank, she pushes a button, and then the mirror opens. And then you walk through the mirror, and it's an area that is a marble, beautiful elevator. And then you get into the elevator, you push the second floor, and then you go up to the bank. It's a private bank. It has all sorts of antiques and just gorgeous area. And they said, well, Craig S. Palmquist didn't tell us you were coming. And so that way we found the money that he had at the Bank of Pictain in Switzerland, Zurich. And that case ended up, the U.S. Customs and IRS were working on that. And they indicted Craig S. Palmquist on 8 counts of fraud. And he was a lawyer in Seattle, and he embezzled from trust fund money. And we tried for about 8 years to have the Bar Association disbar him because he was stealing trust fund money from people's accounts. He worked as a partner at Lane, Powell, Moss & Miller, and he was the golden boy. And he was the youngest partner at Lane, Powell, Moss & Miller. And he embezzled a lot of trust funds at Lane, Powell, Moss & Miller. And the case that I was involved in, there was a lot of different ones. And one of the ones was a boat called the Blue Ocean, and they created that as a tax shelter. And Stovall was another one. There was a lot of different variety of cases, and I ended up talking to about, I'd say 25 lawyers in the Seattle area. I talked to uh, all sorts of people. And Lee Campbell was one of the attorneys that I talked to because Palmquist thought he embezzled. He thought he embezzled $500,000 from Harry Plattis. And so I talked to Harry Plattis. He was at a legal seminar, and I was a law student at the time, and I went up to the podium and I asked Harry if he would talk to me after the speech that he was making was over, and he told me he would talk to me out in the hall. And so Harry went out into the hall, and I asked Harry, Palmquist thinks he embezzled money from you. Are you missing any money? And Harry told me that he was missing $125,000. And I said, that's odd, because Palmquist thinks he embezzled $500,000 from you. That was the 80s. And then Harry said, oh yes, I am missing $500,000. He changed it from 125 to 500,000 in a breath. And he said, Donald Dell Hubbard, who was an orthopedic surgeon, and he lived in Mercer Island. He was my neighbor. He lived right next door to me in Mercer Island. He said Donald Dell Hubbard was going through a divorce at the time, and he didn't want to share his excess cash, the money that he made excess cash, and didn't declare it on his income tax. He invested that with Harry, and they invested it into these tax shelters. And so that was what Harry Plattis told me. And so then Harry sent me on to different people to talk to in that case. And I talked to Lee Campbell of Carr, Tuttle, Campbell. At the time it was Carr, Tuttle, Campbell. And Lee Campbell told me that he represented Lane, Powell, Moss, and Miller. He represented the law firm. And he said how the law firm got away with not having to worry about the embezzlement because insurance companies for malpractice do not pay money for insurance fraud that is embezzled money from the law firm. Insurance companies don't pay that. And so Lee Campbell told me that Lane, Powell, Moss, and Miller filed it in a creative way because they filed it as a miscellaneous tort in King County. And if you file it as a miscellaneous tort, virtually the case disappeared. And that's how Harry Plattis got reimbursed for Palmquist embezzlement. Well, Palmquist was a partner at Lane, Powell, Moss, and Miller. And it's interesting to tell you that I talked to a lot of different attorneys in that case, and all of them told me that it was a sealed file. And as a public interest issue, if I got the file opened, it would tell me a lot of more things. At the time, I called the insurance company for Lane, Powell, Moss, and Miller, and they did not know that Lane Powell had any embezzlements at all. And now they were using an insurance company in New York. And that insurance company, I called them too, and they didn't know about any embezzlements. Because when you file a miscellaneous tort, it isn't claimed as a business loss of the company in the law firm. It's claimed as a miscellaneous tort. And so it's a civil litigation, not an embezzlement claim. And Palmquist wrote bad checks all over Friday Harbor and all over everywhere. And when the police brought him in to question him, he said his brother had stolen his bank account and written those checks. I mean, Palmquist was just a habitual pretender. And the Bar Association issued a guy named Larry Satchel, who was a Bainbridge Island lawyer, to monitor Palmquist's mental health. The Bar Association did not make Palmquist inactive. They allowed him to handle different lawsuits, like the Brazo estate for the property on Bainbridge Island as you drive in. That property, those people lost it because Palmquist wasn't filing things in an orderly manner, and Larry Satchel knew it, and the opposing attorney on that case, I told that opposing attorney that Palmquist was mentally deranged and that he wasn't handling that case and that they should not foreclose on that property because the opposing party didn't have adequate representation. So that attorney, when he foreclosed on the Brazo estate, he knew that the party opposite was not being represented. So he had an obligation to report to the bar that Palmquist wasn't functioning mentally and to have him removed as an attorney. And that attorney didn't do that. Larry Satchel didn't do it. Larry Satchel allowed Craig S. Palmquist to continue being an